Where are we? We're in Tissa. So just go ahead a little. Go back. No, you're on the right page. It's 8 now. Okay.
We did Moses Shekel twice.
So this mimer is also based on the premise that if you're saying that something is, you give half of something, right? So the mitzvah was to give a half of a shekel.
Right, and Hashem provides the other half. Except
and
we said that it's not Hashem providing the other half. Hashem's giving everything.
Right. So that's called shalem v'chetzi. So just to go over again, there was a special, apart from all the donations to the Mishkan, for the tabernacle, there was also one specific donation, which is called machzis shekel, and it was brought apparently at the beginning of our parsha. It was like the first thing that was brought. Okay. And
for the Korban Tommy.
What? Okay, and what do you do with it? So you buy with it all the korbanos tzibur, all the public offerings that belong to everybody. And there's a lot to discuss here. How can it be that just by bringing such a small amount, you become part of all the public offerings that were offered all year long? But in any case, it was also used for other things. It was used for the Bedek Habayit. It was used for fixing the Mishkan. So when the Mishkan was being built, so this was brought every year, as opposed to all the others, which were one-time things. Right? The gifts to the Mishkan that were for the tabernacle were just given once in the desert. But this was given every year. And we still give it. And the minhag is to give it, like you said, on mincha of Tanis Esther. So the question is, why is it half a shekel? Shekel is like a sela, same thing. It's a certain amount. How much is it? So the Torah states specifically that 1 shekel is esrim geira. Geira is like a gargir. It's sort of like a word from gargir. So it's like a speck. It's like a little. It's as big as a mustard.
Seed.
Mustard seed. So there's 20 of those. So you give 10. Right? It says the half of the whole. The whole is 20 geirot, 20 mustard seeds of silver, and you give half of it. So the question is, what is this half? So the usual explanation, like we said and you mentioned, is what the Maggid explained, that whenever you give half of something, it's like Hashem is filling in and making it whole, completing
The
it.
mustard seed is also very small, so that it doesn't have any tumor on it.
It's the smallest amount that's
like
tumor.
Yeah,
but you have 10 of them, so I don't know if it helps. But here he's going to go in a different direction. He's going to say that the fact that you don't bring all 20 is because you're lacking, meaning you can only bring half. It's not again, Hashem is going to do the other half for you, in a certain sense, but he's going to interpret it in a new way that we haven't heard yet. Okay, so Ktiv Noda b'Sha'arim Ba'ala. The Mishlei, at the end of Proverbs, it says that. So we've read a lot of these things. The important part will come at the end. So that he's known, the woman of valor's husband, is known in the gates, and that was a way of saying back in the time that he was an elder. He was sitting there and judging, because all the judgments were done either underneath the gate of the city or underneath some tree. That's how they used to judge. And those are two different.
What's the Indian of underneath the tree?
Very interesting that there were two sources of inspiration, as it were, for judgment. One was a tree, wood, and the other was stone. And this is a very interesting thing, how to understand the infatuation that ancient cultures had with wood and stone. What was the thing? These were the two natural elements out of which you built something. So
is that where you get the Asherah from?
Right. That you get the Asherah, that becomes like everything. The Asherah wasn't just a place to sacrifice, to worship. It was also a place to bring down judgment. It was how it's where the elders sat, and like the Oracle of Delphi, and all these places.
Like the who, what?
The Oracle, the famous Greek Oracle. It was always a way to substantiate your legal decision in something higher, to say that it's not just it's not just humanly mandated, it's something higher. So that was one source. It's a source of the growing tree. I imagine that the idea was that it's like saying that my verdict is natural. It's like natural law. It's what later became natural law. That was one possibility. The possibility of doing it under the arch of the gate, doing it under stone, was like saying that no, I'm not mandated by something that you would call divine, but I'm mandated by human construct.
See, that's interesting, because I totally understood the inyan of under the gates from a completely different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It was the main meeting point. That's where everybody came in. That's where everybody went out.
Sure.
Had nothing to do with any sort of Yiddishkeit or philosophy.
No.
It was just go to this gate. You know, you came in through the gate. You know where the gate is. When you leave the place, you leave through the gate. So it's where everybody knows.
Certainly, it helps. It was the same thing with a tree that everybody saw. Everybody knew where it was.
Uh-huh. Well, there's one in Gush Etzion, right?
There's a famous tree in Gush Etzion, but even in Isaiah, he has, in the basic human thinking, there's two sources for law, and one is that it's divinely ordained and decided, and the other one is that it's humanly constructed. It's a human construct, and usually what the people that deal with symbolism say is that if the law was under a gate, if it was given under a gate, if the judges sat there, then it was talking about human construct. About they didn't need divine sanction. They claimed that they
torts.
What?
Torts.
Mm.
Type of laws dealing with taxes.
Yeah.
Building roads.
Could be there was different types of laws. Back then, I think everything was tried in the same place. It was just what kind of tradition they had set up. In any case, so he's known to be in the gates, and the gates. The reason it's worth mentioning is because the gates are certainly a human construct. Okay, that the fact that that the wise man is sitting under the gate, under the stone, is saying that to know God, you have to build constructs in your mind. You have to build arches. You have to build gateways. You won't be able to know God if you don't build your mind in a certain way. This is the biggest problem that you have talking to people who have not built a certain language and therefore can't really discuss God. They think they're discussing God, but they're not. They're discussing very, very primitive ideas. And to really develop the language, you have to learn Kabbalah. Really, you have to know the Kabbalistic language. Or at least the language of Torah, at least at some level. So now he says, why is he called her husband? Her husband is known in the gateways. Because her husband here is referring to God. And the woman of valor is the soul. So the Almighty, He's the husband of every soul in the Jewish people. Why is he called a husband? Because he provides for each soul. Any amount of love or fear that any soul has is provided by God. And each one receives based on the merit of how much they can conceive in their minds. As much as can go through the gateways of the mind. What are these four gateways? And now he gives a beautiful Yud Kei Vav Kei. He says they're Ava and Yira, Torah and Mitzvos. So clearly he's doing Yud Kei Vav Kei from above to below. Okay. So ava and yira, love and fear of God, they're the gateways of the intellect. Even though it sounds like emotions, love and fear. But what he means here is, like the Rambam says, love and fear. Same thing, that you have to contemplate in order to reach love and fear. It's like love and fear in the Tanya. It's not the natural love and fear that a person has. It's rather the love and fear that come out of and they're a result of the person's thinking, meditation, contemplation. Cultivate. And Torah and mitzvos, they're the Vavke here. So Torah is clearly the Vav. Always Torah is the Vav. And mitzvos is the hey, like we learned yesterday and the week before.
Mitzvah is hemshech. You go to fill in on and you have long straps because it's a hemshech. It's continuing. It's bringing down from above to below. Hemshecha. Bringing from above to below. So shouldn't mitzvahs be the vav?
So tefillin are special because tefillin and Gemara are likened to Talmud Torah. The way that we learn that women, for instance, are patur from tefillin is that we say that they're like Talmud Torah because they also mention Talmud Torah inside the scroll. So tefillin are special. Usually mitzvos are not hamshacha. Usually mitzvos are beyond hamshacha. They're it's like being beamed up in Star Trek. A mitzvah takes something and transports it all at once to where you are. It doesn't go through a process of hamshacha. Hamshacha would be like drawing it down slowly.
But how do you know what Hashem wants? If you don't learn it in the Torah, and then you see there's a mitzvah. By doing the mitzvah, you're connecting with Hashem.
But it's not hamshacha because you're bringing the infinite in. Hamshacha means that it's being integrated into my mind. So there is some kind of integration into the world. It's true, but what it's doing as opposed to Torah is it's integrating the infinite into an act. And like we said, it doesn't matter whether you understand or don't understand what you're doing. By a mitzvah, it doesn't matter where your kavanah is. But by the Torah, there's a huge difference between somebody who understands what he's reading and somebody who doesn't understand what he's reading. And you could say that the person who doesn't understand is not doing the mitzvah.
Mitzvah is like a group without understanding.
But the ruling is that mitzvahs don't need kavanah.
And you understand everything you learn in Torah?
No, but that's why it depends on she'arim and how much you. That's why av and yira.
I don't mean you personally. I mean a human being doesn't understand what's.
Of course he can't, but you understand to a certain amount, to a certain extent, and you understand more today than you understood yesterday.
On the limits of your poor faculties, poor in the sense of compared to Hashem, that we're all garnished.
Right, and that's what you understand on Purim. You understand you're poor. So then you become able to go beyond. The moment you understand that limitation. One day a year, something more is opened up to you. Whether it's opened up or not. But in any case, that's the Yud Kei Vav Kei he says here. Keneged arba otiyot havaya baruch hu. U'le'avin ze, im hakol menu yitbarach, im ken ma'u ha'bchira la'adam. So if Hashem is giving everything, he said, Av and Yira. He didn't say Torah and mitzvos. Torah and mitzvos are not from Hashem. He said, Ava and Yira. Okay? Your love and fear that Hashem gave you.
So where did the Torah mitzvahs come from?
Torah mitzvahs is certainly a man's choice.
Okay. They come from Hashem.
Can, but it's your choice whether you're going to do it or not. But Ava and Yira, what he's saying is, it's not your choice. It's not literally your choice. You can't decide to have love and fear. You can learn all you want, and then there's no love and fear. It doesn't work. It's not turning on. That's the biggest problem with love and fear. That how can I force you to experience love and fear? He says in the end it's a gift from Hashem. So if it's a gift from Hashem, so how is it related to my choice?
But there's a mitzvah to love Hashem. You don't have a choice.
How can you? That's the classic question from the Baal Shem Tov. How can I force somebody to love? Doesn't work. It's not worth anything for sure. If he's going to feign loving, then that's not love. That's the classic question from the Baal Shem Tov. We know what his answer is. His answer always was that there's two types of love. So that's what he's going to say here also. There's two types of love. There's natural love, which I can't command you to have. And there's love, which is intellectual love, which I can command you to have. Okay. There must be something that's dependent on a person's choice. To explain, this is what we're going to learn now. What is dependent on a person's choice and what comes from above. So, K'tiv, it says, Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu Shem Echad, ve'ahavta. Okay, that you should love. V'hinei be'ahavta yesh shnei perushim. Echad lashon tzivui, shete'ehov oto, ve'echad lashon atit, shetavo ahava mimeila. So that's what the Baal Shem Tov explained. That really, when it says ve'ahavta, you can read it in two different ways. And you shall love, it can either be understood as a command. You shall love. You should. That's one possibility. The other is ve'ahavta. The Baal Shem Tov used the language like it's a promise about the future. It's talking about the future. In the future you will love, meaning that if you spend your time contemplating Shema, contemplating that God is one, you'll eventually come as a gift from above, in and of it, without more than that, you'll come to love. You'll come to love God. The first type is talking about meditation, hisbonenus. והיינו להבין בדעתו אחדותו יתברך בשבעה רקיעים וארבע רוחות. ואני השם לא שניתי, שאין לו שום שינוי כמו קודם בריאת העולם. כן הוא ממש אתה. So the first type of love that we want to talk about, that we're commanded to do, really it's the second, it's the first one. It says, tzivui shete'ehov oto. So to command you, what are we being commanded? We're being commanded to contemplate what it means that God is one. And so we learn about his oneness by looking at the word one, echad. So the aleph is Hashem. Hashem is one, above. And then he's also one below in all seven firmaments and the earth. That's the chet, which is equal to 8. And the Dalet is in all four directions. The Rebbe, it's known that when he used to say Echad, he also did something. Because really, everybody says that the ikar of Shema is to elongate, is to spend a long time on the last Dalet. Meaning that to see Hashem as one in all directions. But you can't. So the way people understood is that I think we talked about this. You have to say Dalit, but you can't. You can't. You're not stuttering. So what does it mean? It means you do Dalit normally, Echad, and then you contemplate in your mind. And the Rebbe used to move his head. Did you ever see this? When he finished, after he finished Shema, after he said Echad, he would go like this. You can see it in the videos. He actually moved his head. Said whether you need to move your head, don't need to move your head, I don't know. But the point is that you're seeing God as one in everything that you've ever experienced, in all directions. That's the commandment. That's the commandment part. And that's up to you. Either you're going to spend your time contemplating Echad or not. Not long ago, what's his name? Goodman Locks. You know Goodman? You must have met Goodman once, at least.
I've heard the name Goodman, and don't remember who he is.
He lives in the Rova.
I have a Goodman who's a cousin who lives in Crown Heights, but
Locks, you can guess, is not exactly a...
Smoked salmon.
What?
Smoked salmon. Locks is smoked salmon.
Huh?
Cream cheese and lox.
It's not exactly a Polish name, call it that. So Goodman is a very interesting guy. He's very, very straight shooter. And he's very focused. And he puts tefillin on in the kotel. and I think that he has a business now going with Moshe Schloss. That he puts the tefillin on and Moshe Schloss takes pictures.
Okay.
It's not for money. They just, Moshe's been photographing people at the Kotel for the last 20 years. He has like 2 million pictures.
Right.
Yeah, once in a while on Facebook he puts them up. They're very beautiful. A lot of them. So anyway, so Goodman talks to a lot of people and convinces them to put tefillin on. And so not long ago he said that 2 yeshiva barchim came to him and asked him about what they're seeing after they finished saying Shema. They begin to see this, and they begin to see all these spiritual things, and so he's got a very good intuition. I don't know if he saw it written or whether he just said it. He said to them, "Look, everything that people contemplate to them today is from their heart. It's from their own mind. Don't think for a second you're seeing visions. You're simply seeing what's inside your head. That's all. So if you want to take it seriously, use it as introspection."
The Gemara and Brachos.
The what?
All dreams are nonsense, and what did you even...
Kevin, it's not a dream.
What you thought about during the day.
It's not a dream.
No, but it's
he
the same
thinks
principle.
They're thinking that, we
spiritual.
reached some high spiritual level because we're seeing visions now. And he told them right. He said exactly correctly. I think he's 100% right. That what you think you're seeing is just because you've calmed your mind and you're allowing things to come up. So these visions that you're seeing, they're just a reflection of you. They're not reflecting anything above. That's the big difference between prophecy and Ruach HaKodesh and a person today. That we know today that the subject is so involved in everything that there's almost no object. There's almost nothing objective. So this whole thing is what are you supposed to contemplate? So don't be too impressed by what you contemplate, but you have to do the work. Meaning, you have to. How long do you spend on Shema? How long do people spend on Shema? You spend 3 seconds. You spend a minute. Some people might spend 5 minutes. Depends. I mean, how much do you want to try to awaken love of God? But what he's saying is that you can't awaken love. That doesn't work. So what you do is you contemplate, you work on the contemplation, you build structures in your mind. And there's many, many structures there. There's a ton of stuff. There's a lot of kavanos to learn about Shema. So one of the things he says is, first of all, and this is the Alter Rebbe's main thing, the change and no change, is to contemplate that what we're contemplating is Hashem's unchanging nature in all directions. The Ani Hashem lo shaniti, the fact that I Hashem have not changed. She'en lo shum shinui, he has no change. Kmo kodem briat olam, he's the same as he was before he created the world. Kenu mamash ata, that's how he is right now. Ki kol olamot betelim bebitul gamur negdo kayadua, because all the worlds are like nothing, and worlds we mean the concealment, which allows you to see change. So all these changes, they don't exist. They're nothing. Ki shemesh hu magen havai elokim, because as we said, there's the sun, and then there's the sun's shield, and the same thing is with Havaya, God Himself, and Havaya's shield, the way He appears, which is through the physical world where there's change. And even though the world seemed to us to be some kind of something, meaning it changes, it's a complete fallacy. Nothing can exist without Hashem. And because nothing can exist without Hashem, everything that you're seeing, if you're seeing it as separate, it's a complete fallacy. It doesn't exist. We've seen all this. He's going to add something new today. Okay, so now he wants to see, this is the part that's interesting. This, I think, is the main thing. He wants to learn now from our thought. How does our thought connect with ourselves? How much is the thought part of the self? If I now contemplate, let's say, 1 + 1 = 2. How much does that thought define me? Or how much is that thought just something external to me? Okay, so let's see. כמו באדם, בתחילה כשחושב, אזי מחשבתו באחדות גמור איתו בלי שום התחלקות כלל. He says, in the beginning, when I begin to think, whatever I'm thinking, whatever I'm contemplating, is one with me as if it's not separate at all. So let's take the example of 1 + 1 = 2. So before I put that into words, the way I understand something is really what defines me. I can't separate the two. If I would understand that 1 + 1 = 3, mistakenly, but I would really understand that way, so I would be a fool. I would be a fool. It wouldn't be right to say I have foolish notions. Because if I can understand this way, there's something wrong with me. Okay? So at that level, thought can very much be claimed to define who I am, what type of person I am. Okay? Okay? It's just part of me. However, the moment that I say it, the moment that I say these words, they represent something else. Because speech is not part of who I am. As Rabbi Yochanan likes to say, I can say that 1 + 1 = 3. I can't think that 1 + 1 = 3. My mind, which is not a fool's mind, cannot contemplate 1 + 1 = 3. I can contemplate the words, but I can't picture 1 + 1 = 3. I should try to do that in any way that I want, like 2 apples, how do they become 3? I have no mental picture of 1 + 1 = 3. I have a mental picture of the sentence 1 + 1 = 3, which means that it's already in words. So when I want to express it, I can express it. It's not me. Speech is not me. It doesn't define who I am. And it's just an expressive faculty that I have. This is a very important distinction between speech and between thought. That's why we say in the end that thought, again, there are the garments of the soul and there's the soul itself. So the garments of the soul, there's a thought, speech, and action garment. So the thought is also a garment. So that's what I said. You can think the sentence 1 + 1 = 3 without saying it. That would be like the garment of thought, which is external to the soul. But when I say machshava, not in the sense of a garment, but in the sense of what we say seichel, my understanding, there I can't hold 1 + 1 = 3. Okay. It's who I am. It defines me much more than my speech or any other expressive faculty that I have. So when it comes to expression, I can certainly express this strange statement, but I can't really understand things that way. Ken kol ha'olamot. So he says this is a very good example. He brings it in Tanya and Shari Yuchud. So are all the worlds relative to God. Before creation, before God spoke and said, let there be light and so on, and all creation was done by the utterances, by God speaking, they were one with God entirely, meaning that's how we understood. We would say that's how we understood. It's part of him. כן כל העולמות, קודם הבריאה היו באחדות גמור איתו יתברך. וכמו שבטל הדיבור אצל המחשבה בביטול גמור, כי ברגע אחד יכול לחשוב דברים עד אין קץ. כן כל העולמות שהם רק דיבור אחד, והוא נמשך מחוב ומלא יתברך, כי דכתיב יצא כברק, חיצו. So, you can't think of the worlds as being separate from it. Because before he spoke them into being, before he uttered them, they were entirely one with him. And he adds here another statement. He says, "Ki berega echad yachol lachshov dvarim ad ein ketz." In one moment, he can think an infinite amount more than he can speak in one moment. What does that mean? It means that thought is infinite. And infinite, by definition, That's how we've been defining it. Infinite means no change. Because only in the finite is there a change. So if I can, even in a human being, I can think much more than I can speak. If you give me a second, I can think thoughts, especially when I'm aware of this. I've already gone through the process of understanding it, and I really understand things this way. So I can have thoughts that are infinite in their scope, and it would take forever to explain them. Okay? So in that sense, thought is also closer to the infinite. But when it comes to speech, I can only say so many things in one moment. So that's called that dibur is nullified. It's batel by thought. Because the speech is always about one point, one thing. And compared to what the thought can think, there's an infinite amount more. So there's two things here that make the thought a much closer to the essence type of action.
Thought is ephemeral. It's not in existence. And it comes into existence when you speak.
That's something else. There you're talking about thought that's affected by my speech is because I find it difficult to develop it without speaking. I find it difficult to develop my thought without speaking. But imagine now that I've developed it fully. I'm finished developing it. You could think about it like a mathematician, or like physics, let's say, or I don't know, pharmacy. Everything that you learned, in the end, it gels into a thought. And that thought you can bring up in a second. It contains everything that you know about this. So that anytime that you look at a clinical study, so you have all the experience that you've had with them, and you understand what's going on, and you know what to look at. But if you were now to explain it to somebody, it would take a very long time. So for you, that thought, first of all, it's one with you in that sense that it really defines who you are. Okay? But the other thing is that it's infinite in its scope. It can really be infinite, and it's immediate. You don't have to. Again, when you're developing, so yeah, speech is involved and it takes time to articulate the thoughts and come to a conclusion and so on. But once you've grasped it, it's all in your mind in one moment. So that's the difference. So he says in the same way, all the worlds, in a certain sense, are like Hashem articulating. The world we see is like the articulation of the thought. But in Hashem, it's all been worked out already. In God's mind, as it were, it's all been thought out. It's all there. It doesn't. You don't need to change. There's no change in it. And when you think about the process that led you to your understandings, so there was a process of a lot of change going on. But that once it becomes part of your understanding, it's finished. It's forever that way. It's set in stone almost. It doesn't change. It takes a long time to change thought. Again, which we mean understanding by, right? When we say thought, here in this case, he means how I understand things. It takes a long, long time. That's what Thomas Kuhn wrote, his book called Nature of Scientific Revolutions. Yeah. Why? Because his argument was that scientific change takes a long, long time because once a certain paradigm has been reached, it's very hard to break it. Because people already understand a certain way. So any new data you're going to bring them, they're just going to fit into their constructs that they already have. And so for a scientific revolution to happen, you have to break down paradigms. And he doesn't say the paradigms never break down. They do break down once in a while. In that sense, you could almost say that when a person passes away, the reason he's passing away is to build a new paradigm. That's the data that he can't take in and just to fit into his regular construct. Doesn't fit. It's something completely different. Yeah. Rabbi Nachman said, when I pass away, it'll be like moving from one room to another. Who cares? Because he felt that he already had such a wide construct that no matter what new data he's going to be given, it all still fits. It's just a different way of looking at things. Why is that? Because most people live their lives very ingrained in the material changing world. They live in the articulation of God's thought. But once you enter into the thought, into his understanding, into the way that God understands, that is already...
You understand how Hashem understands you're going to be Hashem.
So, as much as a human being can understand, that's called being like part of Hashem. That's what it means, that we're sons to Hashem. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. In the Tanya, in the first chapter, in the second chapter, he explains. It means that we have the thought construct that Hashem has. We can think in 10 sfirot. And that's the way Kabbalah sees things. It says the reason that we talk about 10 sfirot is not because it's not just because we figured out the best way to describe the world. No, it's because this is how Hashem thinks, as it were. These are the constructs that Hashem uses.
How Hashem thinks by accident?
No, we didn't stumble. It's written in the Torah. We didn't take the 10 sfirot out of thin air. So if a person lives his life not just with the regular construct, how do I make a living, how do I keep my health out of all the things that are in the changing world that are happening, but he's also contemplating Hashem, the way that Hashem contemplates. So says Rabbi Nachman, for me death is only going to be new data that's going to fit into the constructs I already know. It's not going to change who I am.
That's you.
Okay. It's still the same world. Because I've my whole life been dealing with this anyway. This is what I've been thinking about all the time. I've been using these constructs to look at everything. And that's certainly how a tzaddik looks at the world. When he looks at the world, somebody comes to him with a problem. We talked about this. Rav Steinsaltz's famous joke that the Chiddush wasn't that the Rebbe could spend hours contemplating divinity. The Chiddush was that he could spend hours talking to people about little colored pieces of paper. What does that mean? It means nothing. It's like nothing. No, but he understands both. He understands how the regular construct, how people's thinking about the changing, fleeting physical world, how they're thinking about those subjects works. And he can help guide them. But he's also looking at it at the same time, and that's maybe why he has such good advice. He's also looking at it from the point of view of God, where things are understood. They're not just being articulated. They're not just going through the process. The Chiddush of Chassidus is to be willing to engage in the process. Is to be willing to think about the process as well, not just about how God sees it. It's a willingness of the tzaddik to come down into this world and live with regular people their difficulty in going through the articulation process. Okay, I think we need to, right?
Yeah.